today. Next up, we have Deirdre Irwin. She's the Water Conservation Coordinator for the St. Johns River Water Management District. With over 30 years experience with the district, she's worked with the agency's surface water regulatory program, water resource education program, and certification program development and water supply planning. Thank you for joining us today, Deirdre. There you go.
Thank you very much, Nancy. And I am honored to be invited here today. This is a really wonderful event that I know I always learn a lot by attending. So today I'm going to share some information with you about the St. Johns River Water Management District, what we're doing to encourage meaningful, measurable water conservation programming across the district and in Volusia County. So, you know, if you research the history of water conservation in Florida, you'll find that, you know, there's been an emphasis on it for a very long time. In the Florida statutes, you can see that there is an overall water conservation goal about preventing is to prevent and reduce wasteful, uneconomical, and impractical or unreasonable use of water resources. It's a broad definition, but certainly it lays the groundwork for what we should be seeing in water conservation policy. Water conservation touches just about everything we do at the district. It figures into our long-term water supply planning, our consumptive use permitting program. It plays an important role as applicants must demonstrate how they will implement water conservation measures that are environmentally, technically, and economically feasible. According to DEP, water conservation is the most important action we can take to sustain our water supplies, to meet future needs, and reduce the negative impact on Florida's water-dependent ecosystems such as springs, rivers, lakes, and wetlands. So a little more definition there on the importance of water conservation. And you can see that St. John's is very involved on many levels with water conservation. So first, in order to really drill down and understand where we should focus our time with water conservation, it's important to understand who's using the water and how much they're using over time. So our 2020 water use report recently was published. And as we look at the water use data, we can see that the largest segment by far is the public water supply sector, using 53% of total water use in 2020. Collaboration and quantification are key to successful conservation with this user group, and I'll talk later about some of the programs we have up and running. That said, we do work with all of our user groups on their conservation planning and consider water conservation to be essential for all of the user groups. You can see agriculture there is at 23%. I will say, depending on the year and how much rainfall we've had, that is the water use group that is most likely to increase in use in a dry year. So then looking at water use over time, this table will show you what total water use has been since 2011. And then the top line shows rainfall. So it's interesting to look at the correlation between water use and rainfall. And then the other important correlation to look, and I'm sorry, this is particularly for public water supply water use. And then same for public water supply, water use, and population over time. It's really worth noting and remarking that in 2020, we see gross per capita water use, that's the average of water use per person across the entire district, correlated with the bar there for population. We see a reduction in gross per capita over the past few years. So we are seeing more efficient water use despite an increase in population. So then drilling down even further in this public water supply category, we're looking at who's using the water. This is a fairly old table that we've tweaked over the years, originally coming from AWWA, but it is pretty much confirmed by data from our utilities and from the University of Florida year over year. We see approximately 50% of water use going to outdoor water use if there is an in-ground automatic irrigation system. So 50 to 60%, depending on the utility, goes to outdoor if there's an irrigation system. And I'll talk more about, I'll get on my soapbox on irrigation next. But it's also worth noting indoor water use. We've seen a change over the years. In 2011, the EPA Energy Star program launched efficient appliances, dishwashers and clothes washers. Clothes washers used to be the #2 water use indoors inside the home. And over the years, we've seen that reduced to now at 8% of water use with these super high efficiency clothes washers. And we've seen toilets remain #1, faucets and showers equal at #2. So this kind of analysis helps us figure out where we should focus our time and energy to maximize that water efficiency at the residential level. So I'm getting on my soapbox now, so you can block your ears if you're tired of hearing me talk about irrigation. But in-ground irrigation systems use the majority of the water in our residences and commercial facilities, depending on the commercial that it is. And they often waste water. It's commonly thought that 50% of irrigation water is actually excess water that doesn't need to be applied. The efficiency of a system depends on the design, installation, and the maintenance. Some data that we have from the University of Florida from their H2O Save quantification tool is that we are now seeing the average irrigation use is 191 gallons per household per day. And when it's reclaimed water, it's as high as 381 gallons per household per day. So increasingly, we're seeing homeowners are not managing that system well. Even in well-designed irrigation systems, it's not being managed well. There's a lot of reasons. I'm not going to go into all of them, but we do know that getting a better handle on outdoor irrigation is our #1 focus. And we are working on a number of initiatives in that direction. I'll talk more about those later on in the presentation. So another really key and important area where water conservation is focused upon is the district's regional water supply planning process. So it's where we look 20 years into the future. We include population projections, water demand projections, accessibility of available water supplies to determine if current and future demand can be met with traditional sources without harming the natural systems in that region. And then we explore management strategies, conservation, alternative supplies, and projects that water users can implement to meet those future needs. These plans must also identify the potential funding options, and they must be updated every 5 years. So in our district, we have 3 water supply planning regions. 2 of those regions you see overlap with other districts where we work collaboratively with those districts to produce the reports. So Volusia County sits within the what we call CSEC, the Central Springs and East Coast Water Supply Plan. There is a draft version of the plan. I'll show you that website here shortly, but the CSEC Regional Water Supply Plan is subdivided into standalone chapters that are recognized as unique with their unique local challenges, resource constraints facing these 3 distinct regions. So they include Marion, North Lake counties, Volusia County, and the Brevard Indian River, Okeechobee counties. So there are 3 plans within this CSEC plan. So taking a look at historic water use and population versus projected water demand and population in Volusia County, this comes straight from the plan. We see, obviously, we're aware that we're going to see an increase in population. The plan identifies that for Volusia County, for this planning horizon of 2040, there will be 143,000 person increase in population. There will be approximately 24% increase in water use, and that correlates to 21.2 MGD, million gallons per day. So if you'd like to learn more about the CSEC draft plan, which should be going to our governing board for approval this winter, it has its own website within the district's website. If you, the address is right there in our water supply planning section. So I urge you to take a look at the plan. Let us know if you have questions. Joy Coke-John, her email is right there on the homepage, who is managing the production of this plan. And I know she'll be more than willing to answer any questions you may have. So then moving on to our regulatory programs on water conservation, all of our consumptive use permit applicants must incorporate water conservation planning to meet their criteria. So built into the CUP program is a very structured approach to water conservation for all water users. There is a choice, particularly with public water supply, of a standard water conservation plan or a goal-based water conservation plan. The standard plan is by far the most commonly chosen option. A goal-based plan is a little different. It's a description of the water conservation measures selected for implementation based on that service area, and there must be an implementation schedule for each measure within the plan. The standard plan then involves these 5 components. There must be a public education component, outdoor water use reduction, and there are 6 recommended subparts to that section. There must be a rate structure that encourages conservation, water conserving rate structure we call it, a water loss reduction program if water loss exceeds 10%. There may be a requirement for an audit and then measures to bring that water loss down below 10%. And then, of course, the indoor water conservation programming, and there's 4 subparts. So it's really quite comprehensive. Those plans are reviewed by our staff when a new plan permit application comes in, when it's being extended or renewed, and those plans must be updated and then renewed over time. There's sometimes specific conditions related to the water conservation plan to provide updates over the course of the permit, so we can really look and see that conservation is occurring. So I've worked closely with our water utilities over the past 4 or 5 years in terms of developing training programs, collaborating. We meet regularly and we compare notes on the best approaches to conservation. And really their work has evolved greatly in recent years as water conservation is becoming more valuable in these permits and in the water regional water supply plan. As I mentioned, there's a variety of recommended components. We have noticed that the utilities who have added AMI, advanced metering infrastructure, have come to realize the tremendous value of measuring the impact of programming to best manage their programs and get the biggest bang for the buck. Historically, you probably remember, oh, toilet rebates, we'll just offer toilet rebates. Well, over time, the numbers, the quantification have shown that that is probably not the best avenue, that really focusing on that outdoor use is a lot better. So the district also promotes water conservation through the cost share program. And we have funded numerous programs, both in agriculture, public water supply, we typically see things like utility rebate programs for shower heads and faucets, high efficiency toilets, as well as funding for more irrigation efficiency, smart irrigation controllers, irrigation evaluations, and efficient delivery of water to the landscape. Since 2014, the Public Water Conservation, we funded 49 different projects, utility-based usually, to a total of $7.1 million and yielding about 6.5 million gallons per day in water savings. So if you're working at all with your utility and conservation, please consider applying. Those applications will open up again in January. Between mid-January, mid-February is the application period. Reach out, call me, talk to me if you know of a utility conservation program that might be in the works at the moment. We'd love to cost share at 50% for that program. Let's take a little quick look at the springs, the district springs cost share over the years. You can see that significant amount of money has been invested in springs cost share, not just water conservation, water quality too, with funding coming from the local governments, utilities, ag, as well as DEP in St. John's. So there are a lot of partners in both the water quality restoration, alternative water supply, and water conservation cost share funding. And the most successful programs really tend to be the collaborative efforts. I just want to remind everyone of our year-round water restrictions, and I'm doing that because we're about to go into our 1 day a week. This is a statewide year-round rule that is in effect. It varies slightly depending on the district because of our climate. We have different watering needs. It's been around for over 20 years. It's probably the #1 most effective method to reduce outdoor water use. So starting in in November 7th, we changed back to 1 day a week. One piece of information I picked up recently, there is a really great study done every year. It's a survey of a very large number of residents throughout the state of Florida who on water conservation, different types of people, different age groups, urban, rural, etc. And this work is done by Dr. Laura Warner at UF. And she just is in the process of publishing her behavior change study from 2020. And if you can read it down there at the bottom, the likelihood to change behavior to conserve water. This is what folks answered. The #1 reason to change behavior with their water use, outdoor water use, is following water restrictions. So and I know from the utilities we deal with that they have said repeatedly that when they really engage and get active in enforcing irrigation restrictions, that they see a tremendous reduction in water use. That said, Dr. Warner found in 2020 that more people did not know about the restrictions than actually knew that they even existed. So even the folks who don't know that they exist would change behavior due to a rule or restriction on water use. So I found that pretty interesting from her work this year. And I have her whole PowerPoint if folks are interested in seeing more information. She has allowed me to use it. So another thing we're doing at the district is kind of, I really liked what Todd said about engagement, education, outreach, motivating people. And we launched this campaign 2 years ago to a very simple campaign using billboards, social media. We've tried some different ads working with our utilities, just a simple message to water less outdoors. And our surveys have shown some level of behavior change as a result. We're continuing to encourage our utilities to partner with us, so we're all messaging the same behavior throughout the district. So look out for those promotion, which will be coming again soon over in the spring. I think many of you might be familiar. The district has been involved for about 17 years with the Florida Water STAR program. It's a new home building and commercial certification program. It's statewide. We're partnered with the other districts with the Florida Green Building Coalition. And in 2017, we actually partnered with the Florida Home Builders Association to become our administrator. So they are the ones through their subcontractor, they process the certifications for Florida Water Star. And to date, we have over 5,000 homes certified, which is not nearly enough. We realize that we've really struggled to engage builders, working with rebates and various different approaches. We're actually now talking about a really aggressive home buyer campaign to see if we can engage the buyers to understand more. And the Water Star homes are about to be put on a nationwide registry of green built homes, which will help buyers find homes that are built to a higher standard and capable of conserving more water. So let me just go over a few kind of summary on water conservation and why it matters. So obviously, we've heard it many times today, to extend a region's existing water source and delay developing the more expensive alternative sources, to potentially extend the duration of a consumptive use permit. We have had one utility actually extend their CUP by 10 years because they were able to demonstrate sustained quantifiable conservation programming that kept them well below their allocation. So it can certainly help in that regulatory framework. Obviously, to protect natural resources that might be impacted from increased withdrawals. So the more we can conserve, the less likely we are to see those impacts to springs, for example. And then to achieve these goals, we have to remember about the importance of quantification. We're really learning an awful lot about quantifying which programs work, where you should put the money, where you should focus, and behavior change. So that collaboration of learning about likely behavior change and quantification has made a huge difference with utilities who are aggressively implementing conservation programming. And I think that is all I have, and I'm happy to take questions at this point.
Great, thank you so much, Deirdre. That was a wonderful presentation. And I have a couple questions here for you. You mentioned smart irrigation, and I was wondering if you could, other than drip irrigation, what does that entail?
Okay, another term for it is SWAT, Smart Water Application Technology. So it really addresses the controller. So in an irrigation system, you have the pipes, you have the sprinkler heads, and then you have the controller, which is kind of like the brains of the operation. A smart controller or smart technology there's two main types. One is soil moisture based. It's where the controller has a probe in the root zone of the turf grass, for instance, that is set to a certain level that will automatically tell the controller to turn on and off based on the percentage of moisture in the root zone. Then the other, and probably I would say the more popular approach lately, and these devices have been around now maybe 20 years, starting in ag and now in residential, is the ET or weather-based controller that either have a weather station and evaluate the atmospheric moisture, whether rainfall has occurred, even predictive. Based on data with atmospheric moisture, they can predict if rain is likely. And they adjust both the length of the runtime and the frequency of the runtime based on those criteria. The really big advancement, which is somewhat also to do with smart water application, is the fact that now most of these newer controllers are available as an app on your smartphone. So say, for instance, you live in the villages and you go, you spend the winters up north or the summers up north, you can control your irrigation system from your phone. That's huge. That may end up changing behavior more than these other technology devices. Most of them also come with flow meters. So they alert you on your app if you've got a sudden increase in flow, i.e. a leak in either one of your zones or your main line. So a lot of this technology is becoming really popular. We've got several utilities that offer rebates. I think OUC's rebate is $200. And which will pay for some of these controllers completely. So we've learned a lot through the research that we can see maybe 30 to 40% water savings, depending on how much water the homeowner used first.
Great.
It's probably more than you needed to know.
No, that's great information. That is. Okay, we have one here. We pump water out of Lake Beresford off the St. Johns River to irrigate. Is this good or bad, and why?
Well, it's not drinking water, so I guess that's good. You know, I get a lot of reactions when I'm out and about speaking about how awful it is that we're letting people bottle water and sell it. And my response is frequently, but it's okay to spend more than 50% of your drinking water to keep your grass looking green, to satisfy, in many cases, an HOA. You know, a non-potable source is probably better. It's all about the quantity. You know, quite honestly, in a normal year of rainfall in Florida, like this year, I think I've watered 3 times since May. So you might, depending on the design of your landscape, so the source might be better to come from an available surface water versus paying for water from your utility that is treated to that higher drinking water standard.
Very good. And a member would like to hear about rain barrels. They seem so right for this area. Are there programs to promote these?
I believe Florida-friendly landscaping programs around the state do support them. Sometimes they have rain barrel building. I like to talk about rain barrels and describe them as the gateway drug to water conservation. They're kind of like butterflies getting you into Florida-friendly landscaping. Right. They will have no meaningful impact on reduction of water in your yard. However, they help you understand alternative sources, i.e. roof water, and they help you understand quantities, because if you think you're going to not need your irrigation system because you have a rain barrel, you'll find out really quickly how fast it empties. And that in a drought or a very dry month, you may get part of one application from your rain barrel. That said, we have had in WaterStar several builders install system-wide or rainwater harvesting systems. So that would be 10, 20,000 gallon tanks, usually under the home, adjacent to the home. I've even seen them in the garage, up in the attic. And I've seen a couple of homes treat that water to drinking water standard. And they harvest all of their water for their household use from rainwater. So it's a little bigger than a rain barrel, but there is potential.
Right. Cisterns, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. The old-fashioned way.
Right, right. And talking back again about, well, you were mentioning HOAs and their requirement for green lawns. And I know that some people in the environmental community have been working with HOAs to reach out and encourage native plants that don't need that kind of rain, that don't need that kind of water. Are you doing anything to reach out to HOAs?
They're my favorite audience because they're just people. They're not aliens. They're just homeowners who move to Florida who know absolutely nothing frequently about landscaping or irrigation, but they know they want to keep property values up. And so we launched a couple of years ago, well, actually, it's probably only a little over a year ago, CEU training for CAMs. Community Association Managers are now a licensed profession in the world of HOAs. So your typical HOA hires a management company who has CAMs who work for them, who are licensed professionals, who need CEUs. So the best way to get any professional to training, because we were not able to get them to attend training previously, is to offer CEUs. So we have a stormwater training, irrigation training, and conservation easement training. And they've all been done virtually, 1 hour of training. We've had really massive response about how helpful it is. We talk about writing your contract for your irrigation company really well, and enforcing that contract, and then also about what efficient irrigation should look like, and a little bit on the landscaping. Because I'll be honest, even landscapes that are 100% native, beautifully designed, love really nice planting, are still being overwatered. So my focus is to get to the controller of the irrigation. The other thing I've worked with Florida Friendly Landscaping on, we piloted a Florida Friendly Landscaping Club in an HOA to invite the homeowners and board members to come a few times a year and learn about landscaping and appropriate water use. So we're trying.
That's great. One last thing. So you're really focused on water use in yards. And so even when people are using reclaimed water to water their yards, they're still overwatering. And if you dissuade people from using any, excess watering of their yards and their outdoor areas, what do you propose would be the most beneficial use for this reclaimed water?
Well, I think you might be aware that there's a campaign right now called One Water Florida to treat that reclaimed water to a higher standard and blend it perhaps. I'm not sure if all the methodologies have been finalized, that it could become a potable reclaimed source over time. I know I've had a lot of folks call me who want access to reclaim, but which I know is expensive, adding pipes to other facilities like cemeteries. We've already pretty much harnessed the golf course industry is almost exclusively using reclaimed already. And I am aware that storage is an issue, but we're finding with our Central Florida utilities, they're starting to run out of the supply. So excess reclaimed isn't as big a concern in Central Florida.
Okay, great. And I think that that wonderful presentation. Thank you so much for answering questions.